Hello and welcome to the 41 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney III. Today's episode brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. I want to also say thank you to Pitch Logic. It's the system used by players, coaches, scouts, Joe Healy, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy-to-use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level. See pitchlogic.com for more information. I am joined by the man they call Sauce, the great Joe Healy, also Aaron J. Fitt, Kendall J. Rogers. Gentlemen, greetings, salutations. How we doing? Happy fall.
Hello, Runes. Happy fall to you, good friend.
Love your shirt,
fantastic.
For the listeners. He's got the Omaha Baseballism shirt. Outstanding.
You've got one in a different color, if I recall.
Oh, Jenny and I have. We get mocked. We have so many Omaha t-shirts. It's comical.
Runes has that shirt in every Roy G. Biv possibility.
we every year we buy 3 new ones. It's when we know what we like, we roll with it. Kendall, you're a disappointment to the pod right now. You are not wearing your Klein Bengals coaching swag, and that is a problem. From now on, we need you in full Bengals regalia for pods.
I have to be a coach to wear coaching swag, but I'm proud to announce that the Bengals are 2-0. They've outscored teams 55-6, and they're coming off a 33-7 victory.
And the Jar is playing D-line?
He's playing D-line right now. He's a little under the weather on Saturday. It was about 110 degrees, and he had a stomach virus. So great combo. But sorry to tell Fitt, they did beat the Patriots 33-6. So sorry.
I mean, the Patriots had it coming.
Once Brady left.
That's it. It had it coming. Listen, the Klein Bengals are a juggernaut. Just move out the way, everybody.
Kendall, you're on the chain gang, correct?
I am on the chain gang. I have not screwed another team out of a yard yet.
Is it a hard job? Is it harder than it appears?
It is not. I did make a joke about moving the chain last week, and the ref kind of looked at me with a little bit of a mean face. So I was like, dude, I'm kidding. Like, I would never do that.
Was the ref 17 years old? Like, how old can a youth football referee be?
They're older than you think, and I tell you what, they take it very seriously. They take their job very seriously, which is good. The only bad thing is I'm asking any teams, any coaches to either not fire their coach, and a coach to not step down or retire during one of these Pee Wee games, because no phones can be like turned on during the game. Like when I'm doing the chain, I cannot have my phone out ever because they're afraid that I might be recording the other teams, like snap count or something like that. So,
or accepting.
I've been slapped on the hand for that before as well.
Kendall, when you're during the youth games, you should hand Martha to Angela, your wife, and say handle stuff while I'm doing the.
I don't want her running my Twitter account.
She's got quality GIF game. That's a Rogers family quality right there.
It really is. It's one of our qualities.
Yes, well done. Great GIF game in the Rogers household.
What about the Carrots? How are the Carrots looking?
Shaping up. Draft is 2 weeks from Saturday, and we're doing one mock draft a day. ESPN has a cool. It's irritating me, but it's funny. They rank your mock drafts now. You get a letter grade, and I'm getting mostly C's. I've got a D, and I got a B the other night. So anyway, ESPN is, their fantasy algorithm is dumb. Clearly, like they can't evaluate the Carrots' genius, Fitzy.
So is your fantasy football draft the night before the season starts?
Yeah, and actually a game will be in the books. Yeah.
Okay. We can't have that. No, that
is blasphemy. I was about to say, what kind of league is this?
Well, it kind of adds to the spice because
you want the most information possible.
Do you over-index on players that have already played? Is it
Well, I mean, it seems a little silly. I mean, so the first game would not count at all.
No, it counts. Like we create mandatory starters from the first game.
Oh, I was about to say in the first game, like Lamar Jackson against Patrick Mahomes. I was about to say that better count.
Predetermined starters from that game.
All right.
But, now that it's whatever, our season is like 15 games now, so it's
I can't take this league seriously anymore. You get drafting after the season start. What are we doing here?
Yeah,
disgrace.
Who's all the league? Who all do we know in this league? Is the great Freddie Hilliard in this league?
No, this is the my Notre Dame gang. So this is trying to think if you guys would have
Coach
met
Council,
these
Coach Council in there.
Counts. No, he's too smart to be in this league.
Rocket Ishmael.
By the way,
Right,
Runes,
yeah,
after the
Tony
podcast is over,
Rice.
you and I can arm wrestle over the game this weekend.
That's right, Kendall. I want you to know that when Notre Dame beats Texas A&M on Saturday,
Okay.
I will still be very cordial with you. Like I will not
That's
be
fine.
glowed. Yeah, I'm
Nice of
gonna
you.
take the
Guys,
high
I
road.
did tell Runes that he has to take me to South Bend next year.
Ooh, that would be amazing.
I've never, number one, I've never been to South
Backer.
Bend. Number two, I've never been to a game at Notre Dame Stadium, and I want to do that. So
Now that would be an appropriate place for the D1 Baseball shareholders meeting, the linebacker lounge.
linebacker.
That
No
is
doubt.
Ooh,
talk
that's
about
a great idea.
alignment.
Little
Shoes
Chicago
sticking to the
weekend.
floor and
Let's go.
whatnot.
Oh, so great.
By the way, Runes, it sounded familiar to me, and I just figured out why. A bunch of C's, a D, and a B sounds like my undergrad GPA. So I was like, where have I heard that before?
Yes.
And, I just came up with it.
Well
There's
done.
no way you had all C's and D's at Sam Houston.
My PA de resistance, if you will, was one semester when I took 12 hours, and my grades were A, B, C, and D. Just really ran the gamut. I was not a good undergrad student at Sam Houston.
Yeah.
That's on me, not on Sam Houston.
I will
It's
not,
demanding.
fine
Listen, it's
institution.
demanding. Nothing
It
against
is.
Sam
Yeah.
Houston.
Not everybody gets into Sam Houston.
That's right.
It's all good. I will not discuss my senior level finance class. Proceed.
Yeah. Pass, fail. We may not have passed. Speaking of letter grades, that's a perfect segue. I want to, before
right.
we do, we're each the agenda for the pod is that we're going to each pick a team that is a team of intrigue this fall. The idea came to me when I started listing out teams that I'm either interested in doing the fall report this year, because we're starting to circle our wagons there, or teams that I'm like, man, I can't wait to read that fall report. Like I am really interested in that club. Before we do that, so before we hit record, we were talking about some podcast ideas for the fall, and I've got a podcast scheduled for Sunday Night Conversations, which I'm really pumped up about, which is going to be about Tennessee baseball. I mean, the last 4 years, they've been the best program in college baseball, and it that blows my mind. Like for 4 years, they've been so good. 3 Omahas, 2 of the years they were the best team in the country in the regular season, and so Chris Burke, Chris from Louisville, and Ben McKee and I are going to do that, because Berkey can take us back to the days of Coach Delmonico and Todd Helton. And so here's the question I'm going to pose to you guys. So for the last 4 years, 3 years now this year, our national champion has not fared well. Like basically Mississippi State and Mississippi Ole Miss, we'd have to give them Fs for their post note, like if we're putting a letter grade on their national title hangover, they both get an F. And I'm not saying that towards the coaches or players. It didn't go well, right? Like the performance on the field was an F. LSU, given their standards, I think I'm going to give them a C+. Maybe I need to go B- because they did get to a regional final, but felt like 13-17 in the SEC for LSU is not that's C+ feels accurate.
Preseason number whatever top 3 team, right? Were they number 2?
Yeah, really
3?
can't give them a B, can I, Fitzy? Yeah, so let's go C+ there. You guys could override that. So now it's like I'm asking you to take a guess. Joe, I'll start with you. What do you guess Tennessee's grade is going to be?
I think it'll be something like a B or B+, because I think this program is in really peak form in terms of, we know that they don't have the biggest transfer classes, but they go get dudes. Like this year, the transfer market was a little bit quieter, a little bit slower. There wasn't the shiny objects that like there have been in the past, but they got 2 of the best handful in Gavin Keelan and Andrew Fisher, and they got Liam Doyle on the mound. They got the Franklin kid from Kennesaw State, who's got a big arm. So they go shopping in the expensive aisles of the transfer portal. So you've got that, but also I think about a guy like Reese Chapman, who's a really talented guy who's, won a national title now. He's been a role player for a couple of years, and who's to say he's not the next Kavaris Tears or Trey Lipscomb or Jarrell Ortega or whoever that just kind of got off to a slow start in his career, but then really came onto the scene and exploded. They do that right now as good as anybody in college baseball. Just a guy who stays on campus, like bides his time and then becomes a superstar down the road. So when you combine the fact that we know they're recruiting at a really high level, and then also they develop really well, like that's what every team is shooting for, and nobody's doing it better right now than Tennessee. So I think it's, I do think they will hit some bumps because, man, you look at the lineup they have coming back, like I think there will be some growing pains. But I think it's a pretty decent chance it ends up like their 2023 team. They were like, is this team even going to make a regional? And then they got hot late, right? This feels like a type of team that could end up doing something like that ultimately.
Interesting. Kendall, go ahead. What say you on Tennessee? What's your vibe check on the Vols for 25?
Yeah, I have a really good vibe on these guys, and the reason is this. I mean, number one, LSU's tough to kind of grade out just because they lost Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz. I mean, the two big leaguers right now, so it may be a little unfair to give them that low of a grade. But I mean, I think when you look at Tennessee, I think two things. I think the Tony Vitello effect is real. I mean, when you look at some of these coaches around the country, and that's not to say these guys don't want to win the same level. These guys don't want to repeat these national championships. That's not what I'm saying. But when you're talking about a 45-year-old single guy where baseball literally is his life, I don't think there's a honeymoon effect in Tony Vitello's head. Like, I think he literally shows up the first day of fall ball like, hey, like, not that he doesn't care about last year, but like this really and truly is another year. So I think that matters. And I think the other thing is too, as just when you look at what they got out of the transfer portal, from a coaching staff standpoint, they actually upgraded a little bit. I mean, they got, Frank Anderson coming back for another year, Josh Elander coming back for another year. He was rumored to be in the mix for a couple of jobs. And then, oh, by the way, they go add our clipboard guy and Ross Kivett back to the coaching staff. So, I mean, instead of being complacent and just being okay with what they have, they actually went and upgraded their coaching staff in the offseason, adding Ross Kivett to the mix. So, I mean, they went and stole a Big 12 team's recruiting coordinator to be their third assistant. So, Tennessee, at least from a coaching perspective, actually got better in the offseason, and they made some really nice transfer additions. And again, I just think Tony is wired in a way where complacency is not in his vocabulary.
Fitzy, what say you on this?
Yeah, and again, you said it earlier, Kendall, but I agree that I don't think complacency was the issue for Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I mean, I just think it's hard. You lose a lot of guys. So like you win it all, it's because you had an old team with a ton of talent, and then those guys go on. And it's in LSU's case, yeah, they lost Skeens and Cruz, but they brought in the number one ranked recruiting class, transfers and high school guys, right? Like there's a reason the expectations were so high for that team. And Tennessee is going to be in that same kind of mold. I mean, they reloaded extremely well. I mean, Joe hit on some of those transfer portal guys. My goodness, I think they, we haven't ranked the transfer portal classes yet, but they might be the best one. And so, the expectations are still going to be very high. But that said, maybe we're not losing Cruz and Skeens here, but Blake Burke and Christian Moore and, Dylan Dreiling and Gavaris Tears. I mean, there's, there's a ton of star power to replace from this team. And so it's, it's going to be a transition. It'll probably wind up being fine. I think I agree with all you guys that at the end of the day, when we get really into the season, this team is going to be, I suspect, very, very good, but it could go in a number of different directions. Like, I don't think any of us expected Ole Miss or Mississippi State to fall off a cliff the way they did right after winning a national title. It was a surprise. I mean, it felt like those programs, especially Mississippi State, was really rolling. That was like the tail end of a really strong 4-year run. And there was no reason to think that was going to just like nosedive. And so yeah. I don't think Tennessee will nosedive. Just to be clear, I think that's very, very unlikely. I do agree with everybody. I think they've got it rolling, but I'm fascinated to see how this goes now, because it is, it's a lot of big pieces to replace, and I think they've done a very good job doing it.
Yep. I think I agree with you guys, but for different, like one part is a little bit different. Yeah, like it felt like for Ole Miss and Mississippi State, like them winning the national title in baseball was such a big deal at those schools. If I'm not mistaken, for both of them, they're the only male sports ever to win a national title, or maybe Ole Miss has some football.
Didn't Ole Miss win football back in like the 50s or something?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I could say Newtown Edgemont, like who knows? Were we even keeping score back then? But no offense to the 1952, national champs. But the
back when the radio sounded like this. This is what the radio call was like.
Coach.
He's running down the sideline, 30, 25, 20. He's going to score.
Yes. I think like what you said, Kendall, like Ross Kivett coming back, like their coaching staff is in such great shape. You know, there's so much energy around that program. I actually am very dubious of their transfer class. Like, you know, Gavin Keelan is very talented. He's got a 5% walk rate. He's never played in the NCAA tournament before. He hit 6th for Louisville last year at the end of the year. Like, you know, I'm getting Cannon Peebles vibes from their transfer class, which is nice depth, but like impact, you know, Andrew Fisher did hit 20 home runs. I do think he can hit. I do think he's a DH, but it is his 3rd school in 3 years too. Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's that easy to just bop from school to school. You know, I don't know. Like I'm dubious of their transfer class. I'll tell you, their freshman class, and I get it that freshmen struggle in college baseball quite often. They've got, if you look at Shooter Hunt's kind of made it to campus list, Tennessee's got 4 of the top 28 kids. They did great work in the draft. And like you said, Kendall, like they just, or maybe you said it, Joe, like they just seem to always have dudes getting better in the background that are going to be ready. So I just have so much confidence in this coaching staff and this program. I'm not on the transfers thing. It's kind of like, I want to see it play out. I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things too. Like just looking at the transfer class, like the 2 guys that stand out to me on the mound. Obviously, they have some pieces to replace on the mound, but I don't know if it was Fitt or Joe or Seif that wrote the report on Tanner Franklin from the Cape. But I mean, his report looked really good, and of course, Liam Doyle. You know, the arm talent's never been the issue, right? Like it's always been kind of the command thing. But I mean, when you look at the fastball and the slider with Liam Doyle, like when he's on, it's big time. I think there were a couple of games I watched last year where like he just shut elite lineups down. So like there is huge upside there with Liam Doyle and Tanner Franklin.
Well, and the thing about Liam Doyle, he's actually a really, really good strike thrower. That, I mean, if you look at his career, you know, walk rate, it's low. You know, I mean, it's even last year. What was it? I mean,
it's under 10%. It's
I mean,
it's better than average.
He's strike throwing not really an issue. It's just a matter of figuring out. I just think it's a little bit of pitchability piece. Like it's a career strikeout rate of 32%, a career walk rate of 8%. Like that's, you know, like that's not it. It's just figuring out that last little piece. And I think that Frank Anderson will help him do that. And the same goes for Tanner Franklin. I wrote the Franklin thing, Kendall, that you talked about in the Cape.
Yeah.
It was really good look. I mean, and that said, like, that's a guy where we do need more command to come. For sure. Like that's kind of the thing that's been holding him back. But boy, I mean, it's the Arsenal is really big time, you know, like you can easily see it. I mean, I think somebody in our group chat was like, this could be, you know, almost Dollander-ish with like, now he doesn't, I think as you said that kind of, but like he doesn't have Dollander's track record at the mid-major level, but he's got that kind of arm talent, and certainly he's got that kind of body and athleticism. It could be a big time guy, and you just kind of have to trust Frank Anderson to get the most out of him. But yeah, you're right, Rune. It's like he's got to prove it. All those guys have something to prove. Even Keelan, you're right. Like he's a famous guy at high school who's had 2 okay years, but he hasn't really been a superstar yet. Like they thought he was going to be when he arrived at Louisville. So, but it just feels like when those guys show up to Tennessee, they just get better. And it's just, we keep seeing that year after year. And I thought Joe nailed it too about the development piece and the guys waiting in the wings. It reminds me a lot of Louisville in their heyday, you know, where it's like, you know, maybe Drew Ellis, you know, had to wait a year or two, or you know, Hairston didn't play shortstop right away, or whatever it was. Like guys just would come 2 or 3 years into their career and become an All-American. And I think we have seen that repeatedly from Tennessee also.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see like Marcus Phillips. I mean, he looks the part, and I mean, it's an elite arm. He's you know, in Omaha, he's up to 98, 99. Like he's a guy for me that could be a big time breakout candidate for them.
And there's, I'll be quick on this, Runes, so we can move on. But just that's kind of the part of the genius of what the coaching staff is doing is there's really I'm trying to find the best way to word this. There's a really good flow to the recruiting part, right? So I look at last year's freshman class, and it was pretty low wattage relative to, you know, what we would expect for a team that's going as well as Tennessee. Now, obviously Dean Curley ends up breaking out, but he was not necessarily seen as like plug and play day one guy. It was an injury to Ariel Antigua that kind of, you know, that started that thing. And obviously it worked out, but you know, their pitchers last year as freshmen, it was just like, okay, but then you have Dylan Loy, who got a lot better as the year went on and was with Team USA this summer. But I just think they knew as a staff, and this is not, coaches know this is not, I'm not, breaking news here with how you do this, but it's impressive to me that, they knew last year, like, we're going to have a veteran team. We've got a lot of guys back. Like, this is a class we can probably take some guys that we think it might take a couple of years on because we can afford that. Whereas this year, Runes, you talk about the instant impact guys, they're probably just an understanding of we're going to need guys who step on campus and can like really help us right away. And that's, again, like when you're going good, like that's the kind of ebb and flow you want with your recruiting classes.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of as a transitional thought. I just think the 25 season has such intrigue for me because the last 4 national titles have been won by teams that were kind of being groomed for 3 or 4 years, like a group of players that were on the field together for 3 or 4 years. And there is no such team this year that I'm aware of. Like they're like being in the same place for 3 or 4 years just doesn't exist, either because of the draft or, the transfer portal, whatever. It's not just the portal. So I am really curious to see what, as we dive into the fall. So let's do that, boys, as we think about the fall. And really a lot of this is generated by what we read in the summer. Like you read these summer reports that there's so many of them on the website that are great. And you start to get a vibe for, okay, man, I keep hearing that school come up over and over again. Fitzy, you saw more summer stuff than anyone. Who's a program going into this fall that is very intriguing to you? Or you're muted, Fitzy.
Thanks. I think this transition makes some sense here, because we just talked about Tennessee, and I'm really curious to see where Vanderbilt goes next, as a a team that has now seen Tennessee kind of pass them at the moment, for in their state, and for so many years, the Vanderbilt fans were pretty smug about their superiority with regards to Tennessee, and with good reason. For a good 2 decades, that was pretty much the case. And now that balance has shifted, and there's a lot of people questioning how Vanderbilt's model translates to the new era of NIL and the portal and everything else. And they haven't hit as many home runs as a lot of teams in the SEC. And there's a lot of things that, like, people are starting to ask. Vanderbilt fans are starting to get a little anxious. How do we adjust, to kind of get back to competing at that very elite level? And granted, it's not been very long since they played for a national title. Let's not forget that. But nonetheless, I think their roster is interesting. And I saw a number of their guys in the summer. I mean, RJ Davis and I'm sorry, RJ Austin and Jaden Davis, rather. These guys have been good performers. And I'm curious if they can make the next leap to being, real stars. I mean, like, is RJ Austin going to hit for power? I mean, that's something that I'm waiting to see. I think he's got it in him. I've seen flashes of it on the Cape, and I think that's a really important piece for them is Austin and Davis. I think they need those 2 guys to become like real big stars. And instead of, they were already the top 2 hitters of the team last year, but as far as impact goes, like relative to the other stars in the SEC, it just wasn't quite there. They didn't really have those guys that really scared you. And I think those guys would be candidates to do that. Can a guy like Colin Barksey build on what he's done in the NECBL 2 years in a row, really? But this year, he was very good up there, and then that's somebody they need to be kind of a breakout guy. I just think that some of their arms too. I mean, I saw at Orleans, I was just writing up the other day, Alex Kranzler, is a guy that it feels like could be a breakout guy, one of those power arms just kind of waiting in the wings. A Brennan Sieber who, more that sinker slider type look. I mean, there's a lot of guys that they always have depth, right, on that Vanderbilt pitching staff, and it's just a matter of who's going to step forward and become the dudes. And I like what they did with their newcomers too. It's an interesting group. I think it's not maybe as much star-studded, name brand superpower guys as they've had in the past. But I mean, I think on the portal side, I mean, Mike Mancini is a very good player, one of the more impactful transfers probably out there. They're not going to blow you away with his physicality, but he's got a little sneaky pop, which he showed in the regional in Raleigh. I think he hit a bunch of home runs there. Nice get from James Madison. Could plug right in and play in every day in the middle of the diamond somewhere. Cody Bowker, solid, very good in the Cape, and has performed for 2 years at Georgetown. He's not going to blow you away with stuff, but he's a strike thrower with 4 pitches, and a guy that could come in and help him out right away. So I think they did pretty good. I'd like to see what Tommy O'Rourke can do coming off injury. They got him from Stanford, so some nice pieces there. And then one more name I'll throw at you, isn't just kind of spitting names right now, but Brody Johnston, I believe, was a guy that our man Patrick Ebert wrote about this summer.
Joe, you saw him too, didn't one of the guy on the Appy?
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, it was the Appy League. It was Joe. You wrote about him. Yeah, that guy sounds super intriguing. That sounds like the kind of guy we talked about their power situation. Joe, I mean, he's somebody that could step right in and make a big difference there, right?
Yeah, I mean, almost stolen valor there by giving Patrick that.
Jeez, I do apologize. Unacceptable.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Vanderbilt, Brody Johnson is, I mean, it's real juice with a wood bat. It's like one, at the Appy League All-Star game, there were first 2 at-bats were like 110 and 108 off the bat, which you don't see that with wood from college guys all that often. My biggest thing with Vanderbilt is that there is an acknowledgement that the status quo is not okay. I mean, they changed over their coaching staff, which they had been pretty hesitant to do for a while. It was a coaching staff that had been together a while. And they brought in some transfers that aren't kind of your typical Vanderbilt transfers. For a long time, okay, they'd bring in RJ Schreck, who played at Duke. And okay, so he's a highly academic kid who went to another, expensive private school with high academic standards. Or they'd bring in some Ivy League guys. Well, they brought in Kobe Croft from USC Upstate, like a power bat from USC Upstate, which is not a type of guy you'd think Vanderbilt would really take as a transfer. So there is, and he's a good player. Like, that's not a criticism of Kobe Croft.
They call it the Harvard of the Palmetto State is what I hear.
That's right. I've heard that. Yeah, that's right. So, I just like that there is an acknowledgement, because I do think there was also a perception that Vanderbilt was being kind of stubborn. Whether that's true or not, but I do think there was a feeling among their fan base that there was a little bit of stubbornness in terms of just like continually trying to win the same way they'd always won in a college baseball world that's changing. So I would be bullish if I were a fan of Vanderbilt that the staff was willing to say, okay, let's try some different stuff. This is not good enough.
I think they are fascinating. Joe, what's the expression? You'll know this, Fitzy. The blank of our demise was greatly exaggerated or something. In there a famous expression like that?
The reports.
The reports of our demise, where I feel like there's a little bit of that with Vandy, but I also feel like they're just not as good as they were 5 years ago. Like I'm struggling with those two thoughts. Like I think to your point, Joe, like they're having to reshape their roster, like the way they accumulate talent, but they're not going to get to where they were. Like because the best players are not in the portal. They're the freshmen that make it to campus, and Vandy doesn't have access to those players the same way they did. Like 7 years ago, Tennessee wasn't beating them in recruiting. Now they are sometimes. And I think Vandy is a fascinating program right now, because I just don't think they can be as good as they were 7 to 10 years ago as far as like sheer talent goes. But I also think that they're viable, right? Like they hosted a regional 2 years ago. I don't know. Like Vandy is a perplexing program right now because the previous standard was so outrageous.
And I think they were number 1 on our most recent top 100 program rankings. If I'm not mistaken, it was them or Florida. I know the two of them have swapped back and forth at the top 2 spots for the last 8 years or whatever. I'm curious where they will be when we have these discussions over the next couple of weeks. Where will Vanderbilt be now in the top 100 programs? I don't know.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting what Kirk Herbstreit tells Kendall.
That's right.
Where we're allowed to. Yeah. When Florida State doesn't make the top 100 programs, because
I've already have a rule that Florida State can't finish higher than 20th. So,
Kendall, what's a program going into this fall that you're intrigued by? That was a great starter, Fitzy. Bravo.
Well, I got to go with the Texas Longhorns. Obviously, a very eventful offseason for the Horns, but this program or this team, this 2025 team, really gives me 2022 A&M vibes, in Jim's first year. I mean, if you look at Texas, this is not some crazy rebuilding job that Jim Schlossnagle and the staff have to do at Texas. I mean, if you look at their lineup, they get Rylan Galvan and Kimball Schuessler both back behind the plate. Galvan's a guy that I think could be a bit, we talk about breakout candidates. I think he's a guy that could really mold into a really solid overall hitter, and his catching by the end of the last season was way better than it was early in the year. In the fall, it was pretty bad, but by the end of the year in the regional, it was pretty good. So, I like what they have behind the plate. That's always good when you're catching positions deep. You look at the outfield with Will Gasparino. He's another breakout candidate for me. Max Ballou, returned, didn't end up going to the portals, rumored. Then Easton Winfield, who these guys saw up at the Cape. I know his numbers ended up being great, but I mean, if I remember right, he started off really hot at the Cape. So his numbers fizzled out a little bit, but you add Winfield, Jalen Flores decides to come back for another year. You add Ethan Mendoza's out of the portal, who slightly unproven, but I mean has a lot of talent. The question with Texas guys will be, can they pitch enough? Max Wiener worked wonders last year with A&M's pitching staff. Can lightning strike twice? Can he get guys like Max Grubbs to take a step forward? We were just talking offline about, Grayson Sonia being a little bit of a tease. Like, he's a guy that, we've always kind of thought he had really big upside. It's kind of dabbled in there a little bit, but like, can he take a big step forward? So will Texas hit? They will hit, and they will hit a lot. The question will be, can they pitch enough to, compete in the top half of the SEC, which, that'd be a heck of an accomplishment considering, 6 or 7 teams out of the SEC will probably be in our top 10 next year going the season. And 2, can they get to Omaha in Jim's first year? I'm not ready to predict they're in Omaha, but this looks like a super regional type of team on paper for me, just from an offensive standpoint. The question mark is the pitching staff.
I don't know if you guys agree, but I felt like I've come off of this thought, but I'll share it. Like the Texas A&M Netflix series that we lived out in real life at the end of the season, I actually felt like that's part of the reason why I'm more bullish on Tennessee, which I know is kind of like a fantastical idea. But like, I felt like when Ole Miss and LSU and Mississippi State won their national titles, we stopped life on earth to celebrate these things. Tennessee got to be in the spotlight for like 10 seconds. And now in Knoxville, obviously it was an outrageous party and their parade looked amazing. But like the second Tennessee won their national title, we were on to the, Texas A&M wife swap, show. And it was so like Tennessee just got to celebrate under the radar. I'm sure that's totally inconsequential, but I did have that random wild thought there.
Yeah,
So.
and the other question will be, the other thing with Texas too, and this is unrelated to players, but like, can their coaching staff and their program block out the noise? Because it's not like Schloss, the most popular person in America still. I mean, just go look at the dude's comments anytime he tweets. So like, handling that noise around the program will also be really interesting to see, how it just unfolds as the spring progresses.
It is remarkable on Twitter how like, it's like there's an app or a filter on Twitter where a normal person can put a normal comment, and like there's this unhinged converter that just takes like, how could every comment be this unhinged? It's just a remarkable.
My question is
place.
I get it, man. Like, I totally get it from a fan perspective, but like, dude, like, move on. Like, let's move on, guys.
Amazing. Joe, what say you? What's a program? That's a good one. Those are 2 good ones. What's a program that has piqued your interest?
So I was going to say Georgia, but to make it not totally SEC here, I'll actually go a different direction. I'm kind of fascinated by Arizona runes, and that's not a fall report I'm going to be writing. You will be writing, I'm assuming.
Sure.
So I'm interested to write it or to read it. But I just, out in the Cape, I saw like Brendan Summerhill having a great summer, like one of the buzziest prospects out there. We know what Mason White can do. There are going to be questions on the mound. They were just so steady on the mound last year, where they just had those 3 guys that just went out there every week, and you knew what you were going to get, and it wasn't sexy necessarily. I don't know what people are into. Maybe it was. I don't know. But, it wasn't on paper. It wasn't the sexiest rotation, but it just got the job done. And my bigger picture thought here, Runes, and this is actually where I will kind of hand the baton to you here to help me out, because this really is coming from a place of curiosity, but also ignorance on my part, because I'm so, I cover the SEC primarily. So I'm just a little bit blind to some of this stuff, but I get the idea that Chip Hale is quietly doing a really nice job. at Arizona. Like, I like the talent they've had. They've turned over the talent a couple times and they still continue to win games. You know, shouldn't have been in the tournament in 2023. Fine, whatever. But like, I just think they're in really good position to be an instant contender as they move into the Big 12. So I'm just really intrigued to see that and see that progression continue.
I think to your point, Joe, by the way, Fitzy, the editing job you'll do on my Arizona fall report, like if Joe's going to in fact read this, I'm feeling an extra level of pressure. So I'm going to need you to really step forward and help a brother out. If
I got your back. Got your back,
yeah,
Coach.
Thank you. I like the thing about Chip Hale, Joe, that I think is interesting is he is when I've talked to him for fall reports the last couple of years, he presents first of all, he's the most likable guy. He's like you talk to people in professional baseball, you can't find someone that says something bad about Chip Hale. Like he's such a good people person. And his experience level is so enormous, right? Like he's seen so much baseball. He presents ideas and they're just really good ideas. Like one idea was like, I know when he was looking at new pitching coaches and then Kevin Vance came up and I was like, Kevin Vance, like from Boston College to Arizona, like what? Like, and Boston College pitched fine, but like, I was just like, wow, that's so random. It's turned out to be amazing. I forgot that maybe I didn't even know Kevin Vance is from San Diego and he pitched at UConn. And like, you start to put the pieces together. You're like, dang, then he talks about how if Wake Forest can lead the country in ERA, why can't Arizona? We're like both of these places are really tough to pitch. And so they've invested in someone to help Kevin Vance with the stats on the pitching side. And, last year he talked about we're going to be old on the mounds and we need the old pitchers to give our young position players a chance to get their sea legs. That's exactly what happened. Like the old pitchers did it for the entire season. So I'm with you. Like, I don't know the personnel yet, but man, this dude has had good ideas and has executed on them over and over again.
And I will say this too. This is more of like a overall view of Arizona, but like I kind of like where that program is moving forward, going to the Big 12, because they're already able to recruit Arizona well. They're already able to recruit California well. Now they kind of take their brand, east into the state of Texas really heavily. And so I really, the same goes for Arizona State, frankly, just from a branding standpoint. But the fact that Arizona now can dabble in the three of the best baseball states in the country heavily, they can sell the recruits in Texas that they're going to play in Texas 2 or 3, 4 times a year on the weekend. That's a pretty big deal to me when I look at Arizona's profile moving forward.
Yep. 100%. So I'll give you guys one that we can wrap on. And so we're gonna be two league centric. I'll mention Texas Tech. That's not my team, but Texas Tech has me intrigued because I want to believe that last year was rock bottom for them. Like they missed the tournament. I went back and looked at it. Like the run they've been under Tim Tadlock has been just incredible. 2014, which was just his second year there. From 2014 to 2019, which is only 6 seasons, that's 4 Omahas. I mean, 4 College World Series in 6 seasons is just remarkable. I kind of like some of the transfer pieces. It seems like they're doing decent in recruiting. I don't know. I feel like I saw they had a kid at one of the All-American games that I saw a couple weeks ago. They did get hurt with some transfers, obviously, some kids leaving the program. I don't know, like it's more gut feel. I just don't think Texas Tech is going to get down and stay down. That's my gut there.
Something seems off on Texas Tech. I hope I'm wrong. You guys know how much I like Tim Tadlock, how much I love that program's profile. But something has just kind of seemed off with them. And I don't think the road's getting any easier. We just mentioned Arizona State going to the Big 12. TCU obviously has TCU's profile. Oklahoma, who's one of their primary competitors for recruits, going to the SEC. Texas to the SEC. A&M to the SEC. Houston in the Big 12. It doesn't get any easier for Texas Tech. So I'm curious to see what their pathway to getting back to what they were is going to be.
Yeah. And I would say, too, this is interesting. Like, they finished 10th in the Big 12 last year, which
crazy
feels like a typo. And I had several Texas Tech games, and their talent was not 10th. Like, that was not the 10th most talented team in that league. Like, you watch them play, and you're like, well, I could see this turn into something. And I think Tim Tadlock felt like that by the end of the year when they get healthy, they could really have something. That said, the team that really intrigues me is out west. I feel like Stanford is a team that's going to have a very significant bounce back. I keep reading your guys' reports, and I keep reading about these young arms that have had really good summers. And now that said, I don't know anything about Stanford's position player group. They were a real mystery team to me last year. I don't know that I saw them play a baseball game. Like they just kind of got they kind of got out of relevance and just stayed out of relevance for a long time. Charlie Bates, I know, is an incoming freshman that is highly ranked. I've seen him once. He's interesting. But the pitching, and Fitzy, I might lean on you. I'm pulling up some of their pitching. Like the one kid that's really interesting and famous is Joey Volchko was good. Yep. Christian Lim actually was very good last year, had 14 starts and a 4.3 ERA as a true freshman. And I think Matt Scott and Nick Dugan are both back. So yeah, Fitzy, what jumped out to you as far as any Stanford arms you ran into?
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally with you on this as a team I'm buying. I might even put them in my 8 for Omaha back in June. I think that I love the young talent, and we have seen some of those guys take steps forward this summer. Trevor Moore was an all-star in the Cape Cod League. Back end piece. I mean, he threw a lot last year for Stanford, but it was a 6 ERA. But through strikes, missed bats, and he's outstanding this summer. I mean, it's just real good swing and miss slider, not going to blow you away with velocity, but he locates it. Fastball plays up a little bit. I like him a lot. I think he's a clear kind of breakout guy. And then Volchko, you mentioned, that's about as obvious a breakout candidate as you could be. I mean, a guy that's long and lanky and throws 96 to 100, with there's makings of decent secondary stuff there. I think we need to make some more progress with the secondary stuff. But the slider in particular, you'll see it. But it's just a huge arm, and they need him to be really good. You mentioned Christian Lim, a guy that everybody likes out there. I mean, Torrin O'Haran rather. I mean, that's another one. He's still there, isn't he? He didn't leave. I don't believe.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and so it's another good arm. I mean, there are pieces out there, and again, I mean, talk about Rintaro Sasaki. I mean, this famous guy coming in that very much a mystery. But I mean, coming in from Japan, with all kinds of fanfare, and I mean, that could be a big time, impact guy for them. So I'm with you. We need to see, I guess, I have more faith probably in their pitchers than I do in their position players. We need to see some of those guys develop and some of the new kids, how they fit in. But, it feels like a team that has a chance to pitch a lot. And from there, we'll see.
One of the interesting subplots with Stanford is going to be, speaking of Sasaki, how the entire Stanford baseball apparatus deals with that. Rintaro Sasaki is a very well-known commodity in Japan. This is not some random high school player who just came down, he's a guy. And so anybody who's been to Sunken Diamond knows it's not the biggest place or the most, it doesn't have the most media facilities of a lot of, so how they deal with the Japanese media, I think will be interesting. Good luck to their baseball SID. And then he's going to get some help in the spring, I have a feeling. But also so here's an anecdote. Like at the Appy League All-Star game, I overheard somebody saying that when he came in, and he'd only been in the Appy League for 3 or 4 games, they put him in the All-Star game because I get it. Like he's the most famous player in the league. Like, let's just put him in there and, get people interested. He walks into the clubhouse and his teammates on the Appy League All-Star team are watching YouTube videos of his home runs in his Japanese high school games. And so there is a fame to him. And so how does the whole program kind of deal with the fact that it's going to be kind of a weird season with him, and on top of the fact that how good is he, will there be an adjustment period? So that whole subplot is, because I really like the team too, but that is an interesting little subplot for Stanford's season next year is how they deal with all that.
Love it. Very cool.
Can I give you a bonus team?
Yeah, please.
Miami. Those guys finished 27-30 last year. They added 13 players out of the transfer portal. So Walt Villa's fall report on the Canes is going to be illuminating because they have so many new players, and a couple of guys that had big summers that transferred in from Oklahoma State. Max Galvin, Patrick Eber for us wrote about the success he had at the Northwoods League at one point this summer. I think he was hitting around 370 with 4 or 5 bombs. And then Griffin Hugas, the Cincinnati transfer. I don't know if Aaron and Joe, I don't know if you saw him at the Cape or not, but Sci-Fi had a really good report on him up to 94 and said he could be a potential early day 2 draft guy. So, Miami, after a tough first season under JD Arteaga, just how they, how they do this fall with 13 new transfers, not to even include the freshmen coming in.
Yeah.
Love it. Very cool. Boys, this was good. Let's put a cap on it there. As far as the website goes, we have tons of Cape reports up there right now, which is the perfect way to get yourself ready for the fall. Kendall has been updating the fall scrimmages. Those are starting to come into play, which certainly gets the juices flowing. Joe and Mark are doing SEC or have done the SEC seasons in review, which is, those are a great way to get yourself level set going into next year as far as who's coming back, who's gone. I think I mentioned a little bit of this in the beginning, but I'm starting to book out the Sunday Night Conversation podcast, and I couldn't, selfishly, I picked topics that I'm really interested in. I hope you guys end up interested in them, but some of them are really fun. I'm going to do a podcast with Pat Casey on Oregon State, how he built that program and where do they go from here? What does Oregon State baseball, the independent, look like? We're going to do a podcast on Air Force. Air Force has 2 pitchers in the big leagues right now, Paul Skeens and Griffin Jacks. And CJ Gilman's going to be part of that. And he's the minor league hitting coordinator for the Mariners. And so how did they do that at Air Force? How did they recruit 2 kids that are pitching in the big leagues at a school where in theory, when you sign those papers, you can't pitch in the big leagues? I'm going to do one on Cal State Fullerton. Cal State Fullerton's 2003 team had 10 big leaguers on it. Going to talk to George Horton and Rick Vanderhook and Dave Serrano about that. And, same thing, what is the future of Fullerton baseball? Where do they go? Have a Big Ten podcast plan. That's going to be the first one with Tracy Smith and Ben Greenspan on, hey, what did the Big Ten look like a decade ago when it was really thriving? And then what can the future of Big Ten baseball look like? So anyway, I don't want to ramble through all of them, but got one on Tennessee, got one on their national title and kind of where it's come from, Rod Delmonico. Also got one on the SEC West, which doesn't exist anymore, which will be fun. Some guys that played and coached in the SEC West. So all that said, the fall is a fun time to go down these rabbit holes and
Rudes, I hope you have a 2-hour block for the podcast. You have Berkey on.
Well, yeah, Chris from Louisville. Well, and especially on this topic, I'm very interested to see if he will be as a
special 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, Ben McKee's going to join us for that one, which will be awesome. He's super plugged in beat reporter for those guys.
Also, I can't wait, by the way, for all those shows. I love it. The Runes Sunday Night Conversations will be carrying a lot of load for the D1 Baseball Podcast this fall, as it should, as it really always has. But also, hey, don't forget, guys, the top 85 pitching transfers. We are counting down on the website. Not the top 87 or top
Aaron,
92.
Aaron went in top 93. I vetoed that.
Well, we're going to the top 85 incoming pitching transfers. We're counting those puppies down. So
yeah.
Prestigious.
Fitzy, do you think there's a lot of programs out there that have mission statements that say every year we aspire to acquire 3 to 5 players from the top 85 transfer list? Is that where we got that?
It's prestigious, absolutly.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Don't even bring me transfer number 92, KR. I'm no interest in number 92. Kendall, who do the Climb Bengals play this week?
We're off. We're off, so that's why I'm going to Notre Dame versus A&M.
Oh, that's right. That'll be fun. Very good. Go Irish. If you need the lyrics to the Notre Dame fight song, Kendall, for you and the family, just holler. Happy to send you that. Sing that in the voice message for you guys. Yeah,
sounds good.
Didn't sound. Don't do that. You guys will get rocks thrown at you. So very good. All right. That's it, gentlemen. It was great to see you. Everybody have a great week. Go Irish, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball.